Good morning, everyone. It's Lindsey Baker with the Action Hour. Today I am here with Duncan McNair of STAE, Save the Asian Elephant. And Duncan is here with some new news about a bill that they are trying to get through Parliament, and it has enormous public support, which is the good news. Welcome, Duncan, to come on today. Welcome to be here, and please just get right into it. Tell us what's going on, if you would.
Okay, Lindsay, thanks very much. Good morning, and to all your viewers as well. It's great to speak to you. So, Save the Asian Elephant stands for the preservation and protection of this majestic species, now so highly endangered by the acts of man, particularly largely by brutal tourism generated not only in the UK market, but in the US and I'm afraid across the world, where elephants are so brutalized and broken, babies as well, beaten up, stabbed, legs smashed, everything you can imagine and more, to break their spirits for easy use in tourism. Some of those images you just saw, some of them are in the States. There's one in Nong Nooch, a terrible place. I recently interviewed a young woman whose sister was killed there in front of her by an elephant, brutalized in front of her. So STAE has been standing for new law in the UK to start with, to ban in the UK the advertising of venues abroad where Asian elephants and their babies are beaten up and stabbed in this way for easy use in tourism. There's a terrible training photo in the USA. And we've made great headway. We've always based this on having huge public support. And that starts with awareness, of course, because the travel industry has kept a cloak over this for decades. And we started STAE 7 years ago to show the world what was really happening, the horrors for these wondrous species and the dangers for humans around them when the elephants are abused in this way. And we generated huge support. We have a draft bill of parliament. We presented it to government at their request. Government promised last year, Boris Johnson's government, that there would be new law. And in my dozens of discussions with my team, with the Prime Minister's officials, they actually promised a new law to ban brutal advertising for all abused species in tourism abroad. And that includes the big cats, apes, bears, dolphins, equines, and so on. Most of them are deadly endangered species. Tragically, last month, the promises of the government crashed and fell and were not honoured. They did not appear in the Queen's speech, despite all the promises. We've intensified our pressure, and government is again promising, but will it deliver? It's got a bad record on a lot of these promises. So we have urged all the opposition parties, the Labour Party, Liberal Democrat, Green, the Welsh National Party, the Scottish National Party, and the Irish parties, all to support us, and all are supporting us in our push against government to get this law in. Indeed, most of the Conservative government's own members of Parliament support what we're trying to do, the majority, but it takes the cabinet to do this. And you know, I mean, we of course suppose that we live in a representative democracy in the UK, as you do in the US, but it sometimes has some very odd consequences. Our Prime Minister has been in a very unsteady and an unstable position in recent months, and he was effectively heavily lobbied and pushed, if not bullied, by just one or two senior Conservative ministers to drop all this animal welfare. There is an image of the key person.
And this is an article from what publication? We can't.
Well, there's been many, but the one you're showing is from a big London newspaper called The Canary.
I see.
And it's showing this individual. I'll name him if I'm permitted to, but our social media will show it. He believes that animals essentially have no value, have no role, and that we all should be free to exercise choice as we wish for anything, whether it's to do with the riding elephants that have been severely abused, or whether it's to do with the import into our country of products that represent brutality to animals, like foie gras, like fur stripped off defenseless animals, whatever. He says his position is freedom of choice. Well, we disagree. We don't.
What's the animal's choice?
Where's the animal's choice? And by extension, this is a ludicrous argument, and we don't know anyone who agrees. In fact, Lindsey, STAE did a huge survey last month of every parliamentary constituency, 650 of them in the UK, and on average, 85% were strongly in favour of the ban, 2% against. In that that member of parliament I told you about, his constituency, 87% of voters strongly support our ban, only 2% oppose it. So
we just want to jump in here and invite the Brexit Minister of Opportunities on. We know that's who you're speaking about, and some other officials as well. We do want to invite them on any time to dialogue, but all of what you're saying here is in the press. It's all in the British press, in the American press, as we saw a Newsweek article. But we still want to give those individuals an opportunity to come on and give their side of the story.
And if I could add to that, we at STAE have done so. I've invited this person to an open debate in his own constituency with all his voters present. He said he's too busy, diary commitments. I've said, well, let's have a debate at the Oxford Union, which you know well. No answer. And I've said, if you're too busy for all of that, write us a letter explaining and justifying your views. No answer. Now, since he's having a seismic effect on the well-being and the survival of these species, surely he's prepared to come forward and attempt to justify what he's arguing. It's a tragedy if he gets away with this. So,
well, is it just one individual, or is there a group, a large constituency that, well, as you said, the majority are positive for the elephants, for the other animals that are used in entertainment? So where is the power balance of the group that's opposing it? I'm assuming he's not completely alone, but correct me if I'm wrong. And how are they able to manipulate this if the will of the people is otherwise? Well, can you address that?
That is our point, that it's an extraordinary inversion of democracy, that a tiny, tiny minority should dictate policy to an enormous majority. There is something constitutionally very wrong about that. He is not literally alone. We know particularly of another important government minister who is now the leader of the House of Commons, who has also associated with those comments. But we pointed out to him that in his constituency, in called Nottingham Sherwood, 86% of his voters strongly support this ban. Again, only 2% against. He too has ignored our requests for a debate and indeed has failed to write to us at all explaining his views. It's a very strange and unsatisfactory state of affairs. Who do these people speak for? And are they not representatives of their voters? And if they are, they should pay heed to them, particularly if they wish to get re-elected. We hope they will not. And we think this malign influence on these most iconic species in the world should not be allowed to run on.
Yes, and these animals, we want to talk a little bit, Duncan, and I'd like to now perhaps bring in a couple of clips to show that it not only affects animals, which is so key to the environmental, protection of the environment, etc., all the things we always talk about, but it's actually killing people. I mean, these animals, when elephants in particular, when provoked, they will attack, and it's deadly. So there was just a recent story that we will bring out in a moment that's just incredible about the animals' sentience that is, told by that. But let's start with the two from your documentary. Let's go ahead and play.
Every year, Thousands of people visit Nongnuch Village Park for elephant displays. Teams of handlers torture and beat both babies and adults daily.
So its tusk went into me.
Yeah.
Its right tusk, the trunk threw Andrea back onto the concrete.
Yeah.
It then pulled its head back in and then repeatedly attacked. We got to the hospital, we think roughly around 4 p.m. And she died on the operating table around 8:30 that night.
That's good.
Let's let
Traditionally, a mahout starts as a boy in the family profession when he's assigned an elephant early in its life. They remain bonded together throughout their lives. In recent decades, both extreme commercial exploitation of Asian elephants and a new breed of brutal mahouts has emerged. They are responsible for Pajan, designed to dominate young elephants snatched brutally from the wild, often killing the mother who tries to protect it.
It became very aggressive. Its head came down. We were sat roughly the same height as this.
Yeah. And the elephant is, as it were, there.
Yeah, and then its head came down and it was a straight attack. So its tusk went into me.
Yeah.
Its right tusk, the trunk threw Andrea back onto the concrete.
Yeah.
It then pulled its head back in and then repeatedly attacked. As it happened, my dad was with her and she was talking. And she was saying, "Dad, I can't feel my legs. I think I'm going blind." My dad was saying, "It'll be okay." We got to the hospital, we think roughly around 4 p.m. And she died on the operating table around 8:30 that night.
What do you say to the government, the UK government minister dealing with this issue, who has told STAE that tourists should just assess such places for themselves and report back to their travel agent after returning home?
Andrea didn't get to come home. She came home in a coffin.
Elephant riding topped a recent poll as the cruelest of all tourism practices. A letter to your MP can be downloaded at www.stae.org. Thank you for helping us save the Asian elephants.
Wow, every time I see that, I'm re-traumatized. That is, so sad. The human sadness, tragedy, and the terrible, terrible torture. Yeah. Senseless. Senseless.
Well, Asian elephants are wild animals, and the travel industry choose to forget that when they shove these mighty creatures straight in front of their paying customers. And we at STAE have researched and found nearly 1,000 people who have been killed, in fact 750 I think, in brutal elephant attacks when the elephants are abused, and nearly 1,000 catastrophic injuries, head injuries, broken spines, you name it, all because of abuse of elephants who are not properly managed. They are highly dangerous when they're provoked. And so not only is this brutal, intensive tourism and riding and tricks, games, selfies terrible for the elephants, but it is deadly dangerous for humans. That is the first of several ways in which elephants are so dangerous in this type of close encounter tourism.
Let's look at another. This is a story in Newsweek. And if you would tell this story, this is really incredible.
Yes, this is extraordinary. This is about a woman who was attacked by a large elephant whilst she was supposedly just washing clothes in a river or in a pond near to her home. The elephant attacked, trampled, and killed her. And then at her funeral, several days later, it said that the elephant reappeared and threw the corpse around and trampled it and then
my God.
disappeared again. Extraordinary. Sound facts are often difficult to gather, reliable facts, and we have no evidence that the woman or someone around her was not abusing the elephant, because it's extremely rare, almost unheard of, for an elephant who's not provoked to attack. But the fact that it came back out of nowhere to the funeral and attacked the party that it had previously killed, and we suspect there was some abuse in the first place,
Yeah.
is testament to the extraordinary knowing and cognitive awareness of elephants. They are highly complex creatures. They are in many
Indeed.
ways very gentle, and they have great empathy for other species who they rush to save very often. And it's a tragedy because it shines a light on the horrors psychologically that they will endure, as well as physically, when they're brutally taken from the wild, beaten up, stabbed, and then tortured really for the rest of their lives in service of tourism profits. Here's an image of Pajan, the breaking of the spirits. None of this is ancient tradition. It's all new. It's in the last 60 years or so to supply endless elephants from the wild for a burgeoning market since the inception of package holidays in the 1960s. It's nothing to do with Hinduism or faith or traditional culture. That's all nonsense. And it's perpetrated by those trying to make big money out of the brutality of elephants for rides, tricks, games, and the rest.
Yes. I want to show now, some people are probably wondering what they can do to help. So let's go ahead and add your website to the stream here. And maybe what you can do is talk about, I'll also put up the your website address here for the folks. Very easy to remember, STAE.org. And they can come over to your website and take some actions.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit through? And I'm on the website right now. You can guide me around if you want me to open a couple of.
Very much. Well,
Yeah.
all the information is there, as you say, Lindsay, on the website. I'll just say a few things. Anyone who can help us, we are so grateful. This is a crucial time for this species. First of all, we ask that you sign STAE's petition, our online change.org petition. You will find links to it all over the website and indeed on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram accounts. Sign and share, please. Secondly, please write to your own lawmakers, whichever country you're in, to your policymakers and legislators. Tell them about the horrors. There are specimen letters that we've created particularly for UK politicians, but we will happily develop some for the US and other countries. But it's important that they understand what is happening in the name of tourism profits to these precious creatures. So writing to engage with politicians is really important. And the more, in a representative democracy, the more letters they get like that, cut and paste emails is fine, the better. Thirdly, spread the word with everyone, with your friends and family. Introduce STAE to new audiences, and most importantly, to journalists and to commissioning editors, if you know them, to the media, to the press media, to audiovisual media is really important. Another thing, challenge your on or offline holiday providers, or indeed if you're not going on a holiday, challenge them. Do they allow direct contact elephant holidays where people can swarm all over elephants? Because if they do, those elephants have been brutalized. They will not permit these activities like riding and so on unless they've been brutalized into submission. And so the other thing is, please tell us of audiences that we can speak to. I'm planning a trip to the States, certainly in the next 12 months, probably earlier, where I want to speak to all sorts of people and address audiences. I've done 300 speeches in the last 8 years to the European Parliament, to the Westminster Parliament, to huge university groups and veterinary groups and so on. The more the better. Students and so on. And finally,
Yes, and I want to just say, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Finish your last
I was
thing.
just going to say, volunteer for STAE. Contact us at savetheasianelephants@stae.org by email, and we will be delighted to hear from you. Everyone has their contribution to make.
There's the address, and I wanted to say about the petition that it will be listed at the top of this post, pinned to the top of this post, as well as your email address and your website address. Both will be there for people to make it super easy for them to take action. And also, please share out this video. That is a tremendous help. What else can we do? I mean, what else can people do, or what else do you want them to know, Duncan, about this whole issue? What is really important here? I think talking more about the idea of demand. If people would refuse to ride, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, sure. Well, okay, if you go on a holiday to any of the range states, or indeed even in the US, the places where elephants are shown in circuses and zoos, don't do it, and tell them why you're not doing it. I am not going to visit your zoo or your circus because you have elephants in horrible conditions. If you're planning a trip to Southeast Asia, to one of the range states, India, there are about 13 now. There used to be 22, even in my involvement in this issue. Never, never, never go to a venue where elephants are ridden, or where they're washed, or where you're allowed to take selfies with them, or where they're made to do tricks like darts or standing on top of each other or playing soccer, whatever. Don't ever do that, and tell them why not. People need to know why you're turning away from them. What you can do to some of the, I'm afraid far too few, but there are some ethical venues where elephants are observed at a safe and respectful distance, respectful to them and safe for humans, in natural circumstances with their herds, where they're not interfered with. And there are well-known places. Just one, for example, is Elephant Nature Park in near Chiang Mai in northern Thailand, a wonderful place run by wonderful people. And there are several others that we can talk about. Boon Lots is another one in Thailand. There are several. We have to be careful what we say, because what's good today may be bad tomorrow, and vice versa. We know
Explain that a little bit more, if you would.
Well, of course, so many people are just pursuing money, and they don't give a damn about the welfare of elephants. And if a venue changes hands, it's bought and sold, then a very different regime might come into play, where the elephants might have been well looked after, but no longer. And they start to be worked to death with endless rides, 20 rides a day, no proper water, no food, and no shade, and all these requirements they have, let alone being allowed to interact with their herds as highly social animals. So it's dangerous for us to say, you can go to all this list of venues anytime you like, because some of them may have changed in the interim. And we have to be careful, because some of them are, and those travel companies who sponsor them are very feisty, and they threaten us with legal proceedings sometimes. I'm a practicing litigation lawyer, so I can, to some extent, tell them where to get off. But we have to be careful. I want to pause and tell you that in the UK market, we have found 1,200 companies selling brutal elephant venues abroad, and many of them are US-based companies. And with your permission, Lindsay, I'm going to give you just 3 examples out of vast numbers that are US-based companies selling these disgusting holidays in the UK. There will be many more in the US, but if I may mention some.
We prefer not to mention them, but if there's documentation that they are on their website, you can see that they're selling animal entertainment. So people can go check it out.
Unless you tell me, but they are huge names that you won't find them on our website. Sometimes we name them in our social media, but one of them, for example, has an annual turnover of $100 billion. And a part of its business is selling 67 brutal elephant venues in the UK market. We found 67 so far. The name is on my lips, ready to utter it, but I won't do so unless you say.
I mean,
we know it's sound, but I will, respect, of course, any reticence about mentioning names. Um, I'm looking at a list right now, and it's shocking and it's huge. And how they can carry. The only
So
reason they're making this that they're carrying on is because the glare of publicity and of revulsion has not been shone upon them.
how can people avoid these places?
Well,
How can they avoid it?
Well, as I said earlier, one thing to do when you're booking a holiday, if it's an elephant-related holiday or if it's in Southeast Asia, is to say, do you offer on your elephant holidays riding, for example? And if the answer is yes, then you should say, I want nothing to do with this. I am not going to go to that venue. You can go on to say, I am not going to use your company. And it's got to be a very, very clear message, because many of these companies have lied, and lied again about promises of change with respect to elephant brutality. At STAE, we've put enormous effort day after day for 8 years into compiling lists of data, including broken promises of change by companies in the UK market. And that is what has led us to saying that self-regulation, which is utterly failed by the travel industry, is useless, as it is in everything pretty much. And we need new law. We need the uniformity of law in a complex market to ban it with proper enforcement and proper penalties.
If you can give a link to where people can find these US companies that do, if you can give us a link to where we can find those names, we can put it up.
Well, okay, we haven't got that link ready yet because there are so many, and we have to be cautious, because even though we get denials from many big companies that we've taken on, and often publicly, they nearly always claim it's a mistake, it's wrong, it's not true, we've changed, or stupid things like the website's out of date. Well, it may be, but they're still advertising them. Usually it's up to date and they're carrying on advertising.
And I'm sure if you read the reviews that people write, they would probably talk about the venues or the elephants they rode. And
exactly, they do. And it's very sad that sometimes people, of course, getting wise to these horrors, but often when you're in holiday mode, the sun's beaten down on your head a bit. You're not looking for horrors. You're looking for a nice time. You love elephants. You may have had a few drinks. Your critical faculties are not necessarily super sharp. But
and that's when people can get killed too.
They can get killed. They do. I'll tell you something. You showed that very moving piece about Helen Costigan's sister being killed, and Helen and her father were nearly killed as well, as you heard. The shocking thing about Nong Nooch is not just the horror of poor Andrea having been killed, but that that 20 years later, that place is still going strong, stronger than ever. Baby elephants beaten up, crying, covered in blood, worked to death, babies as well as adults, and that it's bigger and stronger than ever. There's its own website shot showing an elephant running across concrete with a young child wrapped in its mouth. I mean, that should be a bit of a warning to anyone.
Oh my gosh, he could just, and the child is dead.
And elephants are very dangerous. If they get excited by something, they go nuts.
So let's just make sure, excuse me for cutting in. What countries, when you're traveling, Americans, people from England, people all over the world, when you're traveling, what cities in particular, what places must we be doubly sure that we are not dealing with travel agencies that promote this?
We can't necessarily identify whole cities, but there are venues, when places are horribly wrong. There are, first of all, there's the 13 range states. That means countries in the world where there are still natural elephants indigenous to the country. And they include India, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, and so on. There's a list of 13. You'll find them on our website. Sadly dwindling list. But
so when you go travel to those countries, that's my point, be extra careful.
Correct.
Check out your travel agent.
Exactly. And you may not always book an elephant holiday in advance. You might get presented with it somehow during your itinerary, or during your just generally traveling around in the country. And you need, again, first of all, you need to ask them, do you permit elephant rides, and do you permit washing of elephants, selfies, any close or direct contact where you touch and stroke them? Because if so, they've all been brutalized. If you look closely, particularly at their lower legs, you will see stab marks all over them, often seething wounds, often limps, often a broken leg, an eye missing, lots of things. Elephant riding, by the way, in itself is terrible for the elephant, which has a very sensitive back with bony protrusions pointing upwards. When they are compressed, it's agony for them. So you put a heavy metal throne on top with a mahout, and then 4 large tourists on top, plus all the other junk that goes on top. And the elephants get worked every day of their lives, up and down hills, beaten, stabbed, no water, no shade, no food, and they sometimes just drop dead. All of that is outrageous, and it should not be happening. And here's an image.
Sorry, I'll go back.
That's okay. So I think
keep talking. I'll go back there.
The elephant there on a tricycle, one of many, being forced to do that. It's not doing that naturally. It's being brutalized behind the scenes into doing this cycling. I think that was at Nong Nooch as well. I'm pretty sure it was. But the terrible thing about Nong Nooch is not that it's unique, but that it's commonplace. And hundreds of people are killed by elephants who are abused, provoked, and spooked, and just go nuts. And they crash through crowds and kill them. They are very dangerous beings when they're riled.
Yes. So, let me just come to some of the comments, and I do have someone say, one of our former guests, Julia Robinson, who does amazing work with horses, says she wishes she knew. How can she find out? Well, you can find out by going to STAE.org site. Also, what about if we could, and I just thought of this, Duncan, put together another petition naming those companies, asking them to get rid of those rides? Can we do something like that, and we can put that up?
Yeah, absolutely happy that we operate on that. I'll tell you something, just so everyone knows, STAE has engaged directly through emails and letters with hundreds and hundreds of companies in the who are selling these vile places in the UK. Virtually only about 10% even bother to reply, and the majority of those claim there was a mistake, implying it was by us. It's just nonsense. And these were carefully prepared letters providing lots of evidence of their own abuse. And they denied it, or they said it's changed, it's out of date. So it's not as if we're taking them by surprise. But no, I'm very happy that we will be, by the way, starting to out these companies. If our government does not bring this law in soon, that is what faces the tourism companies. We will be outing them.
Absolutely, and I think that's a good idea. And also
sure that everyone knows what they're really buying from these people.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy, because if that company knows what danger it's putting its customers into, any insurance that customer may have got through that company may well be avoided by the insurers. So these people are not only going into deadly danger, but they're very possibly going into that danger without any insurance cover at all. So they get speared or an arm torn off or something by a mad elephant, and they've got no insurance the other side of the world to get any treatment. They want to start thinking about that. And I would say, if the answer they get to those questions I suggested is unclear, they should forget it.
Yeah.
It shouldn't. And they should just focus on a few. You know, we don't want to stop elephant tourism. It's important for the future, but it must be.
Yeah. And also we have a question here. We just want to address some of our viewers that come on every day, and we love them so much. But Tom Vincel is asking, isn't there any international protection for the elephants? Or I was thinking that too. Are there no humane organizations in these countries? Apparently they're not. If they are, they're not very effective.
Let's be clear. In the range states, they often have their own laws. For example, in India, which is the home of about 2/3 of surviving Asian elephants, there are wonderful laws. I've looked at them as a lawyer very closely. A very important act of 1960 another even more important one, 1972, 50 years old this year. But and they provide what's called Category 1 protection to Asian elephants as a totemic iconic species. But I'm afraid corruption rears its head. Big money trumps everything. And people look the other way as elephants are illegally poached from the wild in India. And the authorities often look the other way. And it's so sorry to say that these horrors to elephants in temples, in big facilities, are often actually sponsored by politicians and businessmen. They make big money out of it. So the answer is a lot of these countries do have laws to prevent this. Certainly in the UK, the abuse to elephants that happens there would be profoundly unlawful here, and I think in most states of the Union in the US as well. But there's tons of laws. People think there are no laws to protect elephants in these countries. In most of them, there are, but they're all routinely ignored through corruption, backhanders, all that stuff goes on. And if, for example, in temples, which people rather assume are run by holy people who are animal loving, well, certainly those religions are very good. Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, and so on. These are all very animal loving religions. Their true philosophy is gentle and loving to animals and all of God's creation. But the modern manifestation of these temples is very, very different. I've seen the most terrible elephant abuse in supposedly Hindu temples in India. Truly, truly awful, where they engage in illegal poaching of baby elephants. The mother's killed who tries to protect them. They're taken in, they're chained down or with wires. They're not moved for decades. They're beaten and stabbed. I've seen it all happen, taken loads of photos. And it's all for money and prestige. It's an utter tragedy. Many Hindus don't realize the horrors when they send money to those temples, which are run. These boards are run by businessmen and politicians who are in it for money and for personal vanity, in the main. And we have nothing against Hinduism. I personally think it's a rather wonderful, wonderful faith belief system, and the others I've mentioned. But this is a terrible modern abuse of it.
Yes, apparently there's quite a bit of abuse going on, and it's a tragic situation. And the more people can help get this word out, share out this video, go to STAE, take action, follow the links, all of the things we've been speaking about, you can make a difference. And certainly people are starting to speak out, but we need to bring that momentum forward. We have to keep this going because there is opposition, as you say, to this, and apparently they are right now in control, but we want this to change as soon as possible. Duncan, we're just about out of time. I want to give you the floor here for a few moments to just anything you feel that you need to sum up with or tell us that we haven't talked about.
Well, thank you very much. The future of these precious creatures is in your hands and ours. There is so much that can and must be done. Above everything, spread the word. Ask people to speak to STAE. Look at our website, our social media. Social media is almost the most important thing, the greatest hope for these endangered species led by the Asian elephants. It is so crucial. I've explained that you can sign our petition and contact us, contact journalists to tell the story, and the media in any particular, challenge travel agents. And when you're in these countries, be very, very aware. Don't go anywhere near anywhere that allows elephant riding. What STAE is doing, we're moving into another phase. We're intensively agitating with every member of parliament in the UK at the moment. We are getting parliamentary questions answered, coming in thick and fast to government from all the parties. We will be exerting that harder. And if government fails to bring in this law, and we don't know how long this government will last and what it will do, but if it does, then we will be intensifying our engagement with hundreds of these abusive travel companies. And if they fail to answer the evidence properly, we will be putting their names out there. I'll make very sure that Lindsey and her colleagues get to hear these names. Sadly, many will be US-based companies, very big, well-known household names who are still making money out of profiting from torture to elephants. It's hard to say it, but it's true. You must do all these things. We are so grateful if you do, and you will be welcomed into our midst if you contact us at SaveTheAsianElephants@STAE.org. Thank you.
Absolutely. I do want to just give a shout out to Wildlife SOS, which is a sanctuary for elephants and other animals, and also Elephant Nature Park that we mentioned before. And these sanctuaries are needed. When these elephants get retired, they need a place to go, and these wonderful organizations do that. So everyone, please take steps now. We said again, STAE.org. I'm going to also, at the top of this post, list all your social media links for the folks. And I think we'll follow the story, keep us posted. We want to hear what's going on, and we want to call everyone who's accountable here. We want the word to get out. So please keep us informed, Duncan, and thank you for being on today.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone for listening. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.